The story revolves around the Harrison family. For many years, people in Canada believed this was an unfortunate family, as deaths kept happening one after another to its members. In fact, over there, they also suspected that something spiritual might be involved, like a haunted house, for instance. But in the end, it turned out those deaths were actually cold-blooded murders. At the house at 3635 Pitch Pine Crescent, a quiet street in Mississauga, Canada, Bill and Bridget Harrison had lived happily together for nearly 40 years. They were cheerful, sociable people and very friendly with their neighbors. In 1973, unable to have children of their own, the couple decided to adopt a 6-month-old baby boy named Caleb Harrison, a healthy, adorable little boy. From that moment on, Caleb was raised and lovingly cared for by the Harrisons. In 2000, when Caleb was 27 years old, he met his future wife, Melissa Merritt. Melissa came from a well-respected family, with both her father and brother serving as police officers. So Bill and Bridget Harrison felt very reassured when Caleb and Melissa fell in love, and indeed, they truly loved each other. The wedding took place in 2003, and the couple went on to have 2 children together, a son and a daughter. After that, Caleb moved out of his parents' home to start his own family in Georgetown, not far from his childhood home. Bill and Bridget Harrison also became proud grandparents, deeply devoted to their children and grandchildren. But like many other marriages, problems began to arise between Caleb and Melissa. First, it was about money. Then, it was about the children. By 2005, just 2 years after their wedding, they decided to file for divorce. This event nearly broke Caleb completely. Not only was his love falling apart, but he also had to face the pain of not being able to see his children every day. Caleb eventually moved back into his childhood home to live with his parents, Bill and Bridget Harrison. Because of his emotional pain, Caleb began drinking more heavily. People often saw him wandering around local bars. Then tragedy struck. One night in 2005, Caleb drove home while intoxicated and caused a serious accident. The crash resulted in the death of a taxi driver and left 4 passengers severely injured. Caleb himself was also badly hurt. But even worse things began from that point on. A few weeks later, Melissa, Caleb's ex-wife, accused him of breaking into her home and attacking her, even though Caleb was still on crutches recovering from the near-fatal accident. Naturally, the police didn't believe her accusation, as Caleb could barely walk, let alone assault someone. Since the divorce, Caleb and Melissa had been sharing custody of their children on a 50-50 basis. Bill and Bridget Harrison were happy to help take care of their grandchildren. By that time, Melissa had also remarried to a man named Christopher Fattore and had children with him as well. At 9:00 p.m. on April 16, 2009, Bridget returned home late from work. It's important to note that during this time, Caleb was still serving his prison sentence for the drunk driving accident back in 2005. When she got home, Bridget immediately sensed that something wasn't right. The entire house was dark with all the lights off. At that hour, Bill was usually home waiting for her so they could have dinner together. Bridget called out his name, but there was no response. Eventually, she found Bill lying in the bathroom. He had stopped breathing. Although the coroner noted a few scratches and broken bones on his body, the police ultimately ruled it a natural death. Bill had died from sudden cardiac arrest. Let's assume the police were right, but then just a year later in 2010, a similar incident happened again. Specifically on April 21, 2010, Caleb's son, now older, came home from school and found his grandmother Bridget lying at the bottom of the staircase. The boy ran to get help from the neighbors, who immediately called an ambulance, but it was already too late. It appeared that she had accidentally fallen down the stairs, although there were a few unexplained bruises on her body. Nothing more was initially made of it. During this time, Caleb was released from prison earlier than expected due to good behavior. Meanwhile, Melissa was desperately trying to gain full custody of the children. She made many accusations claiming that Caleb was a bad father and that the Harrison family even physically abused the kids. But in the end, the police discovered that all those accusations were completely fabricated. She even coached the children to lie in court. Going back to the year before, in 2009, right after Bill had just passed away, Caleb was still in prison when Bridget was granted custody of the grandchildren. Under the 50-50 shared custody arrangement, when Caleb was incarcerated, his mother had the right to care for the children on his behalf. However, Melissa and her husband Chris took the 2 children she had with Caleb and ran away. It was more than 7 months before the police located her and arrested her for kidnapping her own children. The kidnapping hearing was scheduled for April 22, 2010, with Bridget set to appear as a witness. But do you remember what happened? The day before April 21, 2010, Bridget was found dead at the bottom of the stairs. This event occurred just 1 day before the court confrontation with Melissa. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? Or is it really just a coincidence? After the deaths of Bill and Bridget Harrison, many questions were raised. Bill died on April 16th, and Bridget passed away on April 21st, exactly 1 year later, just 5 days after the anniversary of Bill's death. A strange coincidence, isn't it? In both cases, there were no signs of struggle or break-in at the house. Their bodies showed no evidence of a fight or violent behavior. Caleb was completely devastated by the loss of both his parents. He told the police to investigate Melissa and her husband, Chris. During her testimony, Melissa kept dodging the questions. At first, she said that maybe Bridget was still haunted by her husband's death. So after a year, she decided to follow him. Bridget was the one who found Bill's body, and the place where she died was only a few steps from where Bill's body was found. Later, although not directly, Melissa shifted suspicion onto Caleb, saying that he did not get along with Bridget. They often had major arguments over disagreements, and just like that, Caleb became the official suspect in Bridget's case, because he was the one who stood to benefit the most from the deaths of both his parents, the insurance money and the house. However, all of Caleb's friends and relatives in the Harrison family believed that the accusation was ridiculous. Although Caleb was not the biological child of Bill and Bridget, he loved them deeply. In the end, Bridget's death was ruled suspicious, but that was all. The case was ultimately closed with the cause of death listed as undetermined, and no further investigation was conducted. From that point on, rumors about the house at 3635 began to spread, and the tragedy continued. In 2013, Caleb was still living in that house, sharing 50-50 custody of the children with Melissa. In July 2013, Melissa filed a petition in court seeking permanent custody. That is, she wanted to completely take away Caleb's parental rights. Then, on August 23, 2013, Caleb didn't show up for work. A coworker went to check on him and ended up finding him lying in bed in the bedroom dead for several hours. This time there were clear signs of beating and strangulation on his body. Of course, this was a murder. The police should have declared it a homicide starting with Bill's case, but it wasn't until this third incident that they decided to seriously investigate. The autopsy of Caleb revealed many similarities to the marks found on Bridget's body. From there, the police began to dig deeper into the connection between the Harrison family and Melissa, which boiled down to just one thing: the custody battle. More precisely, it was a custody war that had dragged on for 8 years, starting in 2005. After searching Melissa and Chris's house, the police found a brand new pair of sneakers in the trash. These shoes had been purchased just 1 day before the night Caleb was murdered. In addition, the police found a glove containing the DNA of both Caleb and Chris. Most importantly, under Caleb's fingernails, they found some skin from Chris. It's very likely that during the struggle, Caleb scratched Chris. Clearly, this evidence could have led to Chris's immediate arrest. However, the police wanted to keep monitoring the situation further. 2 weeks after Caleb's death, Melissa filed for full custody of the children. Shortly after, the entire family, including the 2 children she had with Caleb, moved to a new location under police supervision. They were eager to start a new life with a happy family, but at 10:00 a.m. on Tuesday, May 28, 2014, the police raided the couple's home and arrested them. Melissa Merritt, 33, and her husband, Christopher Fattore, 36, were both taken into custody, charged with first-degree murder in the cases of both Bridget and Caleb Harrison. In a 13-hour-long interview, Chris confessed to all the crimes. He said he hated Caleb because Caleb treated the children badly. Clearly, Melissa had lied to her husband to create conflict between the 2 men and to secure custody of the children for herself, which led Chris to attack Bridget and Caleb. The death of Bill was not mentioned. Chris also insisted that Melissa had nothing to do with the 2 murders, that she was completely innocent until everything came to light. But no lies can fool the police forever. On the way back to the jail, Chris and Melissa were placed in the same cell. They began talking, unaware that there was a recording device inside the cell. Chris whispered to Melissa that he had taken full responsibility for all the crimes to reduce Melissa's sentence. That way she could be released earlier to take care of their children. As for Bill's death, at the time the case was prosecuted, he had already been cremated, so there was nothing left to investigate further. However, 2 years later, in 2016, Chris was charged with second-degree murder in Bill Harrison's death because the police found search history on the couple's laptop with terms like, "How long does it take to die from suffocation? Methods of murder that can avoid detection," and other keywords related to killing. In 2018, the official trial began. During the proceedings, Chris changed his testimony, claiming that he did not kill Bridget and that Caleb's death was accidental. However, Christopher Fattore was ultimately convicted of murdering both Bridget Harrison and Caleb Harrison, and sentenced to life in prison. As for Melissa Merritt, she was initially charged with all 3 cases, but eventually pled guilty to manslaughter in Caleb Harrison's death. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison with enhanced credit, meaning 1 day in jail counts as 5 days served. I just learned about this system recently, actually. Since she had been held in custody since 2014, she was released in March of this year. Another interesting detail about Melissa Merritt is that even though her husband Chris tried to take full responsibility for her, she didn't seem very grateful. While serving her sentence in the women's prison, she married another female inmate. As for Chris, he's currently single and hoping to find a partner while behind bars. Regarding the 2 children shared by Caleb and Melissa, there isn't much information about them after the final trial. However, Melissa was ordered by the court not to have any direct contact with the children for 20 years. Therefore, it's likely that the 2 kids are currently living with relatives from the Harrison family. As for the house at 3635, where the 3 consecutive murders took place, it was successfully sold around November 2015 for just over $40,000. Considering its history, that's actually quite a bargain. It wouldn't have been possible to ask for a much higher price. And that's everything I've found out about the Harrison family case, quite heartbreaking and tragic. The twisted daughter-in-law took away the lives of her former in-law's entire family. Leave a comment below about the cases you want me to investigate or share your thoughts for a chance to be featured on TV. For now, goodbye and see you in the next videos.